Welcome, folks. I'm David, and this is From the Hip Podcast. And today we have photographer Adrean. And I'm going to butcher his last name. Indolos?
Indolos. It's close. It's fine.
What can I say? I never could spell or pronounce anything. And Adrean is a local photographer. And do you do video?
Sometimes, but photography is definitely my bread and butter.
So tell everybody about you.
So, do we want like the full story or like the shortened version, or I don't know how much time we have.
We have 30 minutes.
Okay, so this is my, not like elevator pitch, but like the extended version of elevator pitch. So for me, I have been a photographer since I was in junior high. I started off in yearbook with junior high and I carried that into high school. And then it was actually a photography class that I took in high school where my teacher was super phenomenal and she really inspired me to go beyond just the photojournalism of, yearbook pictures, and take photography to a more artistic level. So that's kind of where my passion for photography started. But coming from a Filipino immigrant family, photography was always a hobby, never a career. And so I actually went into college pre-med. And so I actually do have a bachelor's degree in biomedical sciences. And so my plan B was to be a doctor. But what was funny was that while I was in college, all my friends knew that I had a nice camera that I actually bought at a pawn shop because I really wanted something more than a little point and shoot. So I bought my first DSLR in college, and they knew I had a nice camera, nice lens. So I started off like taking headshots, for some of my friends who were like acting majors who needed headshots for auditions and stuff like that. Next thing I know, like all of their friends were like, "Where'd you get your headshot?" I was like, "Oh, Adrian does." Like, "Adrian, the biology major?" I was like, "Yeah, like go see Adrian." And so I started doing headshots, and I didn't mean to start a business in college, but eventually like the workload got so much that I was like, "Hey, like I know we're all broke college kids, but I have to study for my physics exam and you need headshots done. So like, can we work out a compensation?" And like, "Oh yeah," like first it was like pizza, beer, from the upperclassmen. And then eventually they're like, "Hey, like, I need this headshot done like by the end of the week." And I'm like, "I don't know if I can do that." I was like, "Well, how does $50 sound?" I'm like, "Yeah, like $50 for a college kid? Like, that's a lot of money, You can buy a lot of pizza with that."
Especially back then.
Especially back then, exactly, right. So I didn't mean to start charging, but people started like paying me to get their photos done. And next thing you know, like I have a small business within my college campus. And then I guess my first wedding was actually the summer after graduation, where my friend who she got engaged senior year was like, "Do you do weddings?" And I'm like, "Sure. But you take good pictures, like just follow me around." I'm like, "All right, fine." Didn't charge her anything. Her dad ended up like tipping me just $100 as like a thank you.
Where'd you go to college?
Oh, I'm sorry, Oklahoma City University. Okay. Not OU, not OSU, little small OKC University. And so at that wedding, did what I normally do, just took pictures. She loved her photos, and turns out 3 of her 5 bridesmaids were also engaged, also planning their wedding, loved the photos that I did, hired me for their weddings, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And so all the while I'm studying for my MCAT, I'm getting wedding inquiries, and I'm like, well, maybe I'll give this a shot, maybe. And to all of my family's disbelief and no, sorry, Dad, but he was disappointment. I was definitely the black sheep of the family at that point. Because photography is not a career. How are you going to pay your bills? Blah blah blah. But then it all kind of fell into my lap on accident. And next thing I know, so that was back 2012 was when I shot my first wedding. And every year since, it's just been growing until I was able to move out. And it was kind of a testimony for me whenever I could pay my own bills, through all the clients that I was bringing in. And I think that was when I got my parents and my family to kind of back off. They're like, "Oh, like he's actually doing well," once I was able to support myself, support my lifestyle through photography. So that's kind of where I am today now.
So until you got income flow well enough, they still wanted you to be in the med community. Correct?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So like I said, my first wedding was 2012. It probably wasn't until like 2015, like 4 years later, that my mom would be like, "Oh yeah, like how's the business?" Like, "Oh, it's good." Like, "Oh, you could always, go to med school, or nursing school is only 18 months if you want to do nursing school." I'm like, "Nah, I'm good for now."
Well, I just don't see you in scrubs
I look good in scrubs. I'm just saying.
I'll be nice and not say that would be an improvement.
I love
You
it.
know, what can I say? I first met Adrian. He was doing a shoot at Golden Studio.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a very creative guy. And one day he comes in and says, I've got something for you. I said, what is it? And I've got it here, folks. I've had this on the wall for 5 or 6 years. Can we see that on camera? This was shot in the studio. And he's got the magazine.
The actual magazine it was in, yeah.
It was first time being published?
Yeah, it was my first time being published, and then they gave me like a little spread too, so we can show more of the other photos. But the theme for this publication was yellow, and so for me, the first thought that I did, you know, obviously besides like a yellow dress, I don't know if you guys can see that. So we did like the yellow makeup, which was a challenge for even the makeup artist Victoria Jameson to do. And this is one of actually our favorite models to work with, you know, Ashley Owens, who's been to Coven Studio several times. But yeah, when I thought, you know, yellow, I thought sunflowers, and so we got her to lay in a bed of sunflowers, which was fun. And I don't know if you still have it, but you used to have like a tall ladder scaffold kind of thing.
We had a big rolling ladder with
Yeah.
a cage on top. We got rid of that. It just got so much space, and you couldn't fold it up to move it anywhere.
Correct.
And you had to take it apart to move it out of the studio.
But that was essential to getting these shots because I had to shoot directly above her all the way down. So I was
Yeah.
probably like 8 feet in the air maybe.
We've got a 9-foot step ladder, and Jennifer Harden, another photographer, she was just telling me last week, she did a milk bath in the studio, maternity, and she got on the very top of the 9-foot ladder, over the tub, bent over. Now, the rolling ladder we had was a lot safer, but this is a foot taller. I mean, who cares about safety if you get a little bit higher, right?
I mean, anything to get the shot.
Yeah.
As long as you get the shot.
But people have commented on that picture that he did. That's really good. Do you know where he shot it? Yeah, here in the studio. In the studio? Yes. And he brought in fake sunflowers. Had a big bag full of them. And if I'm not sadly mistaken, we still have them in the studio.
Probably.
You gave them to me.
Yeah.
And we still have them in there unless somebody's throwing them away recently. But they get used still.
That's good. I'm glad.
But the shot looks just like it was done outside,
Yeah.
you know, in a sunflower field somewhere.
Right.
So that's real cool.
Yeah. Thank you. And, you know, obviously thank you for opening your studio to me.
Well, you paid for it, so you know.
Well, I mean, at the time, I mean, this was probably, I forget when, this was probably like 2016.
Well, it ought to be on the magazine somewhere.
I'm sorry?
It ought to be on the magazine.
Well, it is on the magazine.
No, where it was when it was printed.
Yeah. Well, because what I was going to say was that, like, this is probably early in my career. And so, like, I'll be honest, like, I didn't have a ton of cash on me, and, you know, this publication wasn't paid for. And so it's like, you know, I just wanted to do something like creative to get me out of the realm of like senior photography, wedding photography. Like, I just wanted to really flex my creative muscles. And so I wanted to take on this challenge of something like yellow themed, but I didn't have a lot of cash to do it with. And so, you know, thankfully, like, your studio was affordable to me, and we were able to pull it off. And all the other people that are on here, like our stylist, our makeup artist, and our model, like, they basically did it, you know, just for the art of it. And so, like, shout out to the entire team that put the shoot together. We were able to create something, you know, very beautiful with, you know, almost like next to nothing.
I know that's been one of the real joys of having a studio. I'm not creative, but I get to see and meet creative folks like Adrian all the time and see what they can do in our space. And we got a big prop room. And, I mean, they do all kinds of neat stuff. And Glenn Wilson, our sound man, he's done stuff that I don't even know was done in the studio. You know? And I know he shot this today, and I know it was in the studio. How do you do that? He's real good about that.
Yeah.
And you are too.
Thank you.
And so, continue with your photography journey.
So, yeah, so I guess 2016 was probably the Well, okay, so 2016 was when I truly dove into photography full time. For all the different photographers out there, like I have been at every stage. Like stage one was living with my parents, basically freeloading, just asking people for free photo shoots just to build my portfolio. Probably from like 2014 to 2016, I was making decent income, but I was finally able to start like helping my parents with bills. And then 2016 was when I decided to give photography the good chutzpah, the good college try, and just like go on my own and do it full time. So no side jobs, just focus on photography full time. So from 2016, I really started building brand. One of the things that I guess was a big advantage to that was that I was in direct sales. In college, I sold knives. I sold Cutco knives, and that's kind of how I learned sales, how I learned business, how I learned how to build rapport, all these things, how to get referrals. So I had that business experience, applied it to my photography business. And so by 2016, I was able to go full time and able to support myself full time. 2 years later, like every single year we would grow, 3x every single year. By 2018, I was getting to the point that I had limited availability, and yet I was still getting inquiries in. And so I was like, how do I
Not
fit
putting anybody down.
Yeah, and how do I fit more than 52 Saturdays in my schedule, right? And so that's when I started developing a team. And so I started hiring some associates to kind of shoot for me. They started off as second shooters as weddings, and then I would have to I don't want to say like pawn off. Like I would have to have them take over certain shoots if I was already booked. And so obviously I would give them fair commission on that, but I still got some money just for providing them the lead. And so that's where kind of AI photography as a studio, as an agency, kind of was born.
It's actually his initials and name of the company. It's not the AI that we use.
Not artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
No. It's not today's AI. AI, at least for this logo, stands for Adrean Indolos, right? And so my AI photography, my AI team started from there. 2018 was when we started bringing in other people onto the team. Also brought in a videographer, so we were doing photo and video, because I saw very early on in the wedding industry that I told everyone, I was like, video is going to give it 5 years, video is going to be right on par with photography. Lo and behold, here we are today, everyone's looking for photo and video teams, right? They're not looking for separate photo and video. So I knew early on that like video is going to grow, and it's going to grow very fast. So I brought in videographers onto the team to help grow the wedding team. And so 2018 was the start of the team. I got a very interesting offer come across my desk. There was a high-end portrait studio in Southlake that was looking to sell their business. And it was a very expensive transaction, to say the least. And I mean, I had to ponder and think about it and meditate for months whether or not to pull the trigger. But luckily, I had a very strong support system, and everyone said, Adrian, if anyone can do this, it's you. So I did. So in March of 2019, I signed a very expensive lease, a very expensive business-to-business transaction, and I took over what was formerly known as Luce Photography out in Southlake. And so we finally had like a little brick and mortar, little studio.
Not a little place. Now, I know you didn't have a lot of square footage, but I came over there.
Yes, you did.
Extremely nice.
Yes. Well, it's Southlake, right? It's Southlake, Texas. For those who don't know, it's one of the richest cities in the state of Texas.
I mean, I've been in the slums with our studio.
I wouldn't call it the slums.
Compared to where he was. Was it about 10-story building?
So the building itself was 10 stories, but our little studio was kind of tucked in a little corner on the first floor. Yeah.
But still, high dollar per square foot rent.
Absolutely. But we had the clientele. When we acquired that business, we had the clientele because, like I said, Southlake being one of the richest cities in Texas, the clients also paid very well as well. And so we had a place to call home. Then we expanded our team to not just photo and video, but we also brought in hair and makeup as well. Luckily, I made some best friends throughout the years of shooting, weddings, fashion work and stuff like that, to where I had two best friends I brought along with me to be my head of hair or the director of hair and director of makeup. And so each one of us kind of operated our own departments, for lack of a better term. Well, not independent, but like as a team.
Cohesively.
Right? Cohesively, right? Because when we have, a high-end client that wants to come in and do a photo shoot, they're expecting to have, a hair and makeup team as well. And so they come in, do their hair and makeup prep in the studio, and then we, do their photo shoot immediately right after. So it's easy for our clients and it's easy for us because we all just get to come to work, at the studio. And so we really grew, to much to my surprise. Like, man, like we're really like blowing up. And it was exciting. It was very stressful to be both CEO and photographer. And that's kind of a different topic in of itself, because at that time I was more CEO than I was photographer. And I didn't realize how much I missed holding the camera. It's one thing to be a business owner, photographer. It's another thing to like a company and not hardly, pick up the camera. And I didn't realize that I'd ever miss it,
Side story.
Yeah.
I was taught by a master photographer. I got into this in 1972 or 3. I worked for a master photographer. And I talked to him last year. Now, he retired several years ago. He's in his 90s. But the last year, before he closed the studio, and let's call that 15 years ago, probably when he was 75, his studio did 500 and some odd weddings. He did 4 of them himself, 400 of them himself.
4 of the 500 he did himself?
400 of the 500.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. He's been the local PTA president, the state president, the Southwest president.
Right.
It's Gil Gilstrap, if any of your old people know him. Great photographer and a perfectionist.
Yeah.
So anyway, you're banging along, knocking down the big bus, got a big team.
Yeah, and it was very exciting. But like I said, like I missed, doing the creative stuff. I missed holding the camera. If it were me, 11 out of 10 times, I would prefer to be out in the field, sweating my butt off in the Texas summer heat than being in a business meeting for an hour and a half. Like, it's great, and I love meeting people. But yeah, I'd rather be out in the field, at least at that time.
Do you still have the studio?
I don't. So unfortunately, what the big thing that happened in 2020, which everyone knows, right, was the pandemic hit, right in that March of 2020, which is crazy because, so the crazy thing was that so we just opened the studio in 2019, or at least the merger was. And then a year later, I get a report from my accountant that we were on pace to do $250,000 in revenue in our first full year. And I was very excited. Like, as a team, we had, a big team meeting. We showed them the numbers. We're like, yeah, this is going to happen.
Now, was that $250,000 in profit or $250,000 total sales?
In total sales between, hair, makeup, photography, videography. For our first full year, we were about to do $250,000. And we were all very excited. And then literally a week and a half, 2 weeks later was when everything shut down with COVID. In fact, for 3 weeks, we couldn't even get into our building because they completely just shut us down, with all the different rules and no one knew how to handle it, right? Because we haven't had, a major pandemic. Heartbreaking because I'll be honest, I was not smart about my money at that time. Not that I was out buying stupid things, but I was taking every penny of profit that we had and investing it into personnel, into equipment, into, just putting everything back into the business, thinking, we were going to do really well that year. And then, shut the door. And so we shut down for 3 months, or for 3 weeks, can't even access the studio. I'm left there with, my shorts pulled down. And it sucked.
I think it was May of 2020. We closed the studio for a month. And I did allow 3 shoots to happen that were maternity shoots. And the baby's not going to wait till the pandemic's over with.
Correct. Because we didn't know when it was going to be done. Yeah.
And so, but those were only 3 shoots that happened that month because we were closed to everybody else.
Yeah.
And, but then, first, June, we came back, and they got real busy.
Yeah.
Pent-up demand, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of how it was for me as well. So if you kind of fast forward a little bit, like 2021 and 22 were probably the biggest years we've had since then. I mean, it definitely wasn't like $250,000, because unfortunately what had happened was that, like, because we were shut down for so long, I had to furlough a lot of our office staff. And then, I mean, all of our photographers, makeup artists, I mean, they were all contracts anyways. They're all contractors. And so everyone kind of went their separate ways. But at least like the core group of us like stayed together to work together as a team. And so we continue to do weddings moving forward. And so what's crazy is that, like, if you balance out all 3 years, right, it ends up being pretty average. But it was like nothing for 2020 and then huge spike for the next 2 years.
Well, we're about to run out of time.
Yeah.
First, tell people how to get hold of you.
So you guys can find me on my website. It's just adreanindolos.com, ADREANDOLOS.com. I will put like a little thing down here, maybe. On Instagram, my personal Instagram is Adrean_I, so ADREAN_I. You can also find me on TikTok, which I'm not as active on there as much anymore, but it's the same thing, Adrean_I. And then I have my business line, where you can call and text me. It's 214-865-8348.
Repeat that one again slower in case they're writing it down.
214-865-8348.
Okay. Now, we're not going to end here right now, but we're going to
Sure.
end here in the next minute or two.
Yeah.
So you close the studio eventually?
So the studio itself, we let go. I mean, like you said, it's in South Lake. Rent was
Ridiculous.
crazy expensive, right? So we let the studio go, and we started, just kind of operating like out in the field, kind of back to the, boots on the ground kind of thing, which is fine, because, then we don't have as many expenses. But what's crazy is that here we are now back in 2024, and I am poised to be in the same position as where I was back in 2018, where like the demand for my services and my team are starting to grow. And so there might be a little resurrection of the AI media, agency. But I have some different ideas. I definitely learned a lot of lessons operating that studio and that agency. I have some different approaches to how I want to do it moving forward.
Well, let's chat about that off camera.
Sure.
But, folks, it's been great having you. Adrian's an interesting guy and one of the first people I've ever met that can out-talk me. We'll be
I don't know if I should put that on my resume or not.
He did great. Thank y'all.
Thank you for having me, David. Absolutely, this was fun. Thank you so much.